Welcome to Empowered by Self-Love, the podcast. I am your host, Jessica Fuentes, and this is the Reinvention Series, a space where self-love, confidence, and leadership come together through real conversations and honest reflection. In here, we explore what truly means to reinvent yourself, not by becoming someone else, but by reconnecting with who you are, honoring your journey, and leading your life with intention. This podcast is brought to you by Empowered-SelfLove LLC, where self-love becomes confident leadership. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this space, this conversation, and this time for yourself. Whether it is your first time listening or if you've been part of this community since season 1, you are welcome here. This podcast exists as a reminder that growth is personal, leadership is human, and self-love is not optional. It's foundational. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Empowered by Self-Love, the Reinvention Series. I am your host, Jessica Fuentes, and today we're talking about confidence. Not confidence as people see it on the outside, and not confidence as perfection or as having all the answers, but real confidence, the kind that is built through experience, the kind that is developed through growth, the kind that grows every time you do something that scares you. One of the things I often say is that confidence is not something you automatically have. It is something you build. And yet, so many people believe that confident individuals were simply born that way. They look at successful professionals or leaders, entrepreneurs, speakers, performers, or executives, and they assume that these people possess something special that others don't. But the truth is, confidence is not a personality trait reserved only for a selected few. It is the result of experience. It's the result of growth. It is the result of repeatedly showing up, even when fear is present. And if you've ever looked at someone and thought, oh, I wish I had their confidence, I want you to know something. Confidence is not something they were given. It is something they built. And believe it or not, guess who used to be incredibly insecure? Me. When people see me today, they often see someone who speaks confidently, coaches others, hosts a podcast, writes articles, and shares videos online. But that wasn't always me. For many, many years, I struggled with insecurity. And I constantly felt like I was less than other people. Less attractive, less capable, less professional, and less qualified. I worried about what people thought of me. I feared rejection. I feared criticism. And I feared judgment. And the more I tried to fit in, the less I felt like myself. I adapted to what I thought other people wanted me to be. I changed parts of myself so I could be accepted. But when you're constantly trying to become someone else, you slowly lose connection with who you really are. Eventually, I got tired of questioning my worth, tired of feeling inadequate, tired of allowing fear to influence my decisions. So I sat down with myself and I started asking some difficult questions. Where did these insecurities come from? Why did I feel this way? And what I discovered was eye opening. Many of those insecurities were rooted in experiences from my childhood. In my childhood, there was a lot of comparison between my siblings. There was a big age gap between my siblings, and that sometimes made me feel like I didn't quite fit in anywhere. Many of the children I went to school with in elementary school came from families with more financial resources than mine. And little by little, I started creating meaning around those experiences. I began to believe that somehow I was less than. Not because anyone explicitly told me that I was, but because that became the story I created. And here's what I've learned: many of us carry childhood stories into our adulthood life. This is normal. This is not atypical. We carry old labels, old fears, old limitations, and old beliefs. And then we wonder why confidence feels so difficult. But the truth is that confidence often begins when we start questioning the stories we've been telling ourselves all of our lives. And that's exactly what I started doing in my own journey. Today, I want to share with you 3 lessons that help me build confidence and continue to help me whenever self doubt tries to creep back in. Lesson 1: you don't need to know everything. You simply need to trust that you can learn. One of the biggest misconceptions about confidence is that confident people know everything. But guess what? They don't. Confident people simply trust themselves to figure things out. And this reminds me of a chapter in my life that many people don't know about. I am a singer. Or perhaps I should say, singing has always been one of my greatest passions. But despite loving music, I always struggled with performing in front of large crowds. Auditioning felt even more intimidating. In my 20s, I decided to pursue a singing career. I recorded a demo, I performed at events, I sang in front of crowds of more than 300 people. I auditioned for a band in Puerto Rico, and to my surprise, they loved me. They wanted me to join. And you know what I did? I didn't join the band. I said no. And not because I wasn't talented enough, not because they didn't want me. I said no because I was afraid I wouldn't fit in. And to this day, that is one of my greatest regrets. Later, I moved to Miami in pursuit of that dream. I auditioned for a Daddy Yankee music video. I traveled to Orlando for another audition. I even auditioned for American Idol. And every single time I felt myself holding back. My voice would tremble. My body would shake. I was so focused on the possibility of rejection and criticism that I wasn't fully present in the moment. But something interesting happened. The auditions and the performances that went the best were the ones where I wasn't thinking about what other people thought of me. That audition in Puerto Rico was one of them. I simply closed my eyes and the band was playing live, so that energy was incredible. It was amazing, and I simply sang. I wasn't worried about judgment. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was simply enjoying the experience. And years later, I can clearly see the lesson. The moments when I performed the best were the moments when I stopped focusing on other people's opinions, when I simply allowed myself to be free. So, when we focus on fear, we shrink. When we focus on the experience, we expand. And although I didn't end up building a professional singing career, I am incredibly proud of myself because I tried, because I showed up, and because I exposed myself to those experiences, and many people never dare to do that. Could I have tried harder? Of course. Could I have lowered the volume of fear sooner? Probably. But every experience taught me something valuable. And every experience helped me build confidence. And that's the thing about confidence. You don't build it by avoiding experiences. You build it by living them. Now, let me go to lesson number 2. Fear is a messenger. It is not a stop sign. Fear typically shows up as protection, but most of the time, it isn't protecting us from failure. It's simply reacting to unfamiliar territory. Fear isn't necessarily saying, don't do this. Oftentimes, it's simply saying, you've never done this before. When I entered the world of coaching, I felt incredibly insecure. I questioned whether I was capable. I wondered whether people would take me seriously. I wondered whether I could actually help people. But I enrolled in the certification program anyway. And something interesting happened. The more I learned, the more I loved it. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. There were difficult moments, of course, and there were moments when I felt super uncomfortable. And there were other moments when I even questioned myself. But I kept showing up. I kept learning. I kept exposing myself to new experiences. And today, the feedback from people that I have coached confirms that I made the right decision. I've watched people gain clarity. I've watched people challenge their limiting beliefs. I've watched people discover possibilities they hadn't even considered before. But none of that would have happened if I had allowed fear to make the decision for me. The same thing happened when I started posting videos on social media. Oh my God, how scary, how intimidating. I remember thinking, oh my God, what will people think? What if I make mistakes? What if people criticize me? Or what if I don't look right? Or what if I don't sound right? But you know what? I posted anyway. And when I look at those first videos today, I can clearly see the growth. I can see the progression. I can see the confidence increasing over time. And that is exactly how confidence is built. Not by waiting, not by becoming perfect, but by showing up consistently, by allowing yourself to be challenged, by proving to yourself and only to yourself that you are capable. Fall in love with progression, not perfection, because those small wins eventually become completed projects. Completed projects become achieved goals, and those achieved goals become evidence that you are capable of far more than you once believed. Now, lesson number 3. Use your past success as evidence. One of the most powerful ways to build confidence is to look at the evidence already present in your life. Your past experiences are your evidence. Your evidence that you can learn, your evidence that you can grow, evidence that you're capable. I remember a time in my professional career when I was asked to assist our legal department with company registrations in multiple countries. And I had no idea of what I was doing. I had no clue of what was expected of me and what was I supposed to do. I didn't understand the process. I didn't know the requirements. I didn't know how everything worked together. In fact, I even encountered resistance from people within the legal department. But I kept learning, I kept asking questions, and I kept improving. And over time, I became deeply involved in that process. Years later, when organizational changes occurred, I became the person responsible for training members of the legal department on those same registrations. Think about that for a moment. Like, the person who once knew nothing about the process eventually became the person teaching it. So, what changed? Not my intelligence, not my potential, not my capability. The only difference was knowledge and experience. The obstacle was never lack of ability, it was simply inexperience. And that is an important distinction because many times we label ourselves as incapable when in reality we're simply inexperienced. If I had allowed fear to stop me from accepting that responsibility, I would have missed an incredible opportunity for growth. I would have missed the chance to become a valuable contributor. And I would have missed the confidence that came from mastering something I once knew nothing about. So, I like to leave you with a question. Think about a challenge you overcame 5 years ago. What did you learn from it? What strength did you discover within yourself? What skills did you develop? And you know what that is? The answers to all of those questions? That is your evidence. That is proof that you are capable of learning something new. And that is evidence that if you've done it before, you can do it again. This podcast is another example. Creating a podcast was so intimidating. And for me, English is my second language. So deciding to do the podcast in English was even a bigger challenge. I knew people will hear my accent, and I knew I will make mistakes, and I knew I wouldn't be perfect. But I also knew that if I waited until I felt completely confident, I might never start. So I started anyway. And here I am, more than 2 years later, more than 60 episodes recorded, more than 13,000 reproductions across platforms. Not because I was fearless, but because I chose action over the fear. And every episode became another piece of evidence that I was capable. The same applies to my singing journey. And no, I didn't make it in the music industry because at times I allowed fear to hold me back. But I can honestly say that I really enjoyed that journey. And every time I allowed myself to be free, I felt alive. And that is one of the greatest lessons confidence has taught me. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't avoiding mistakes. The goal is living fully, experiencing life, exploring possibilities. discovering what you're capable of. If there is one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, is this: you do not need to become someone else to be confident. Confidence is not about having all the answers. It's not about being fearless. And it's not about being perfect. Confidence is built every time you choose to move forward despite uncertainty. Every time you challenge a limiting belief. Every time you take a chance on yourself. Every time you do something that stretches you beyond what feels comfortable. You simply need to start taking small steps that expose you to new experiences. Growth doesn't happen when we stay where it's comfortable. It happens when we allow ourselves to be stretched beyond what we've known. Those experiences shape us, strengthen us, and ultimately lead us towards the person we are meant to become and the life we are meant to create. And trust me, one day you will look back and realize that the fears that once controlled your decisions no longer have the same power over you. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. You learned, you adapted, you grew, and through that process, you developed confidence. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you earned it through experience. That is the power of growth. That is the power of self-belief. And that is the power of reinvention. As we close today's episode, I want to thank you, truly, for being here and for sharing this space with me. If something you heard today resonated with you, allow yourself to sit with it. Reflection is where clarity begins and where reinvention quietly takes shape. Remember, growth doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty, self-awareness, and the willingness to keep showing up for yourself. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can follow me on social media or visit my website. You will find all the links in the episode's notes. Thank you for choosing this moment, and thank you for choosing yourself. Until next time, lead with intention, move forward with compassion, and trust the journey that you are on.